Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I'm here today to do a book haul for the month of July 2025. All of the books that I brought into my library, as you can see, there are a lot of them. And this is actually misleading because where the camera leaves off, there's still this much. So the pile's actually like that big, and there's another pile behind it that is half as big as this one. So we have a lot to talk about. My book hauls in 2025 have gotten bigger. And part of that, or big reason behind that, is that I started reaching out a little bit more to publishers this year. You know, money's a little tight. I obviously still have a book addiction. So I've been reaching out to them and seeing if they'll send me stuff. So we're going to start with things that I was sent by publishers. And that goes to about here. Then we'll get into stuff that I either got for myself or which were gifted to me. Many of these were purchased while Joel and I were back east visiting family. And I have already read some of them because my plan for that trip was that I would read an ebook on the plane on the way there. And then once I started getting books, because I knew I was going to be getting books, I would start reading what I picked up. And that is why I have actually read a good chunk of these books. So when we get around to my book haul revisit 1 year from now, things are not going to look as bad as they might appear from all of this. And if you're unfamiliar with my book haul revisits, I'll link the most recent one in the description box down below. Now, because there are so many of these books, I'm going to spend time doing all of the things I usually do, talk about what the books are about, read a little bit from the opening. And then when we get further along into some very heavily backlist titles, I'm going to speed up and maybe not spend as much time, maybe not read the opening. So that way this video won't just get incredibly long. I had thought that I might top myself and this might be my biggest book haul ever, but it came short by 2 books. My biggest book haul ever had 34 books. This one has 33. We'll see. I'm sure I will get over that number at some point, but not this month. And I am wearing a t-shirt from one of the bookstores I visited in New York, Book Culture. Now, when I lived in New York, this was my bookstore of choice because they have a location on the Upper West Side that is close to Columbia University, which is, you know, I was living near Columbia University because I moved to New York to go there. I ended up not graduating. It's a whole long story, but I always feel like I have to mention that when So I didn't graduate, but I did have a lot of good times at Book Culture. I don't think it would be my favorite bookstore if I lived in New York City now. And that is because of McNally Jackson. They opened a store at Rockefeller Center and it is wonderful. I loved it. They didn't have t-shirts, so I had to settle for, you know, a bookmark and the books that I got. Anyway, without further ado, let's just start talking about the books because, as I said, we have a lot to talk about. So we're going to start with the books that were sent to me by publishers. Some of these have been released. Some of these are still coming out. I'm excited about all of them. So the first book that I brought into my library in the month of July was The Greatest Possible Good by Ben Brooks. This is actually on sale now. I have an advanced reader's copy of it. It was released on July 15th, so you can get this book right now. And I should mention, especially when I start doing rapid fire and not spending as much time on books, anything that is available on bookshop.org, I will have a link to it in the description box down below. For books that aren't out yet, that will be a pre-order link. But for books like this that are available, you can get more information about the book there, or you can purchase a copy from them. Or you can do it at your local independent bookstore, whether it be Book Culture or something else. Or you can always check out your local library. It's good to support your local library. So I read about The Greatest Possible Good, and I immediately felt like this is a very Greg book. So I felt like I needed to have a copy. I almost read it in the month of July, but a different book that I picked up in July is also a sort of complicated family saga. And we'll get to it. But because I had read that book, I decided to hold off on this one. I really do want to catch up to it. So this is published by Avid Reader Press. And here is what it is about. Meet the Candlewicks. 17-year-old Evangeline, aka Dubbin, is a self-styled radical activist who wants to change the world and despairs at the smug complacency of the rest of her family. Emil is a painfully shy 15-year-old math prodigy who has just begun dabbling in drugs. Their mother, Yara, arrives at airports 4 hours early and fears that AI and climate change will leave her children unemployed and unable to go outside for longer than 10 minutes. And Arthur, the father, is a hapless and always neutral man who can't decide if he is a good person or a doormat, forgiving and understanding, or weak and terrified. Their comfortable lives are thrown into disarray when Arthur walks into the woods one night for a stroll in his calfskin slippers, only to fall down an abandoned mine shaft. Disoriented and unable to move, he remains there for 3 days with only a bottle of mid-range Bordeaux, his son's confiscated stash of LSD, and his daughter's book on the theory of effective altruism for company. When he's rescued, he is a man transformed. Determined to give away the entirety of his wealth and devote the rest of his life to the most worthy causes, his metamorphosis shocks his family and triggers a chain of events that will have far-reaching and unforeseen consequences for them all. Equal parts skewering and achingly human, The Greatest Possible Good spans 10 years in the lives of the Candlewicks as they struggle to come to terms with their father's good deeds and introduces one of the most memorable and dysfunctional families in contemporary literature. I love a complicated family story, as you may know. So in my book hauls, I love to read a little bit from the opening of the book. Oh, it opens with a quote from James Baldwin. I love that. So that is what I'm going to do. Part 1 is called A Pair of Shoes. Chapter 1. Around a lacquered oak dining table made from looted church pews, below a bulkhead lamp that had once belonged to a Polish fishing trawler, the 4 members of the Candlewick family were picking distractedly at clay plates of salad. The dish was a delicately improvised medley of charred root vegetables and crumpled feta, doused in Manuka honey dressing and crawling with ant black sesame seeds. The opening of The Greatest Possible Good by Ben Brooks, on sale now. And thank you to Avid Reader Press. The next book, I'm so excited, and they sent me a finished copy, which I am even more delighted about, is Long Distance. This is a story collection from Aisha Ghul Savage. You may remember Aisha Ghul Savage because I read a book of hers back in January called The Anthropologists, and I really liked it. It had vibes of Jhumpa Lahiri to me, so I am so excited to read more by Aisha Ghul Savage. And here it is. This is published by Bloomsbury, who, again, was kind enough to send me a finished copy of the book. And I am so excited to read it. Here is what it is about. A masterful and tender debut collection of stories from the acclaimed author of The Anthropologists about distance and closeness in the age of connectivity. A researcher abroad in Rome eagerly awaits a visit from her long-distance lover, only to find he is not the same man she remembers. An expat meets a childhood friend on a layover and is dismayed by her unexpected contentment. A newly pregnant woman considers the American taboo of sharing the news too soon, but can't resist when an opportunity comes to patch up a damaged friendship. Long Distance showcases Savage's devastating talent for the short story. Her shrewd encapsulations of contemporary life often center on characters displaced more by choice than circumstance. Characters both determined to install themselves in new lives and preoccupied with the people they've left behind. Sounds so good. So, here is how this book opens. In the cases of short stories, I just go to the first short story in the book and read from the opening of that. So the first short story in this collection, what do you know? It's called Long Distance. Leah changed the sheets when she got up. She'd bought flowers the previous day, tulips that she'd put on the dresser. There were carnations on the kitchen table in a squat glass vase. She thought they looked cheerful and not too fussy. That's the beginning of Long Distance, a story collection by Aisha Ghul Savage, who I have already read one good book by this year, so why not look for another? Now we have The Convenience Store by the Sea by Sonoko Machida and translated by Bruno Navasky. This was sent to me by Putnam, who has been really good to me this year and pretty consistently sending me stuff, even if I didn't ask for it. And I am so thrilled about that. If you are familiar with like the Restaurant of Lost Recipes and the sequels to that, there is a tie. It has that sort of cozy Japanese author vibe. And it is also compared to Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, which is interesting because that is a book that it's not cozy, but it does have that sort of vibe of a cozy book at times. And it's a little out there, so a crossing of the two, like the kind of out there and the cozy, is really interesting. At least it is to me. So here's what this book is about. Welcome to Tenderness. In the quaint seaside town of Kitakyushu, the harbor district of Majiko is full of hidden delights, and one unexpected treasure is the 24/7 convenience store, Tenderness. Sure, it's a bit odd that the incredibly handsome manager has his own fan club, and perhaps the customers are somewhat eccentric, if not entertaining, but there's a warmth about the store that draws you in. The truth is, Tenderness is different. Operating only on the Kyushu island, the Tenderness chain stands firm and proud by its motto, caring for people, caring for you, no matter the cause. And for Mishuko, dishing out delicious food is simply the appetizer to his unsolicited but hearty wisdom on the town's shenanigans. An international bestseller with over 500,000 copies sold, The Convenience Store by the Sea tells the delightfully quirky and heartfelt stories of the store's customers and employees, offering us all a unique recipe for a good, fulfilling life. I mean, doesn't that just sound fun? So I'm really looking forward to this one as well. I'm looking forward to all of them. Here is how The Convenience Store by the Sea opens. There's a prologue. I'm going to skip past the prologue and go to the first chapter, which is called My Convenience is Your Convenience. Mitsuri Nakao was living a full life. She'd married her college sweetheart 17 years ago, and with her son, a high school student, they were a family of 3. She worried a little about her son. He was in a rebellious phase, but otherwise she hadn't a care in the world. Let's stop there. That's the opening of The Convenience Store by the Sea by Sonoko Machida and translated by Bruno Navasky. All right, cruising along, we have Wanting by Claire Gia. This was sent to me by Tin House, and this is actually a finished copy. So I can't tell you exactly when this is out or if it is out already. But if you follow along, you know I'm a fan of Tin House. They have a lot of really quirky and diverse reads and usually have very interesting covers for their books. And they've published both of Morgan Talty's books. So they are an imprint or a publisher they're an imprint now of Zando, I believe. But they are someone I always watch for. So here is what this book is about. Ye Lian is thriving. She has a well-paid job, a nice boyfriend, and plans to marry and move into a luxury apartment in Beijing. She's wanted for nothing until her childhood best friend, Luyo Wenyu, returns after a decade in California with seemingly everything. A successful career as an influencer, a millionaire American fiancé, and a bespoke mansion in Beijing's suburbs, throwing Lian's own reliable choices into high relief. As the two women rekindle their friendship, Wenyu reveals a shocking romantic secret that pushes Lian to question her own relationship. A few neighborhoods away, aging architect Song Chen is forced to confront his past and his dissolving marriage as he's tasked with building Wenyu's dream home. And when the dark side of Wenyu's enviable life emerges, threatening everything Lian and Wenyu have built, they must make a choice that may have devastating consequences. Doesn't that sound interesting? Here is how this book opens. Chapter 1. Lian sat on the front stoop, her arms wrapped around herself so tightly her thumbnails created pockmarked valleys in the flesh of her biceps. She wished she'd put on a jacket before coming outside. She couldn't go back in the house now. That's Wanting by Claire Gia. And now we have a sweet gay rom-com that was sent to me by Zando's romance imprint, which is called Slow Burn. See You at the Finish Line by Zach Hammett. What a cute little cover. I can sum this one up for you because I have read the back of the book and am very familiar with it. So you have George, who is on the rowing team at Cambridge. Yeah, he's at Cambridge. They are competing with Oxford. So he is one of the stars of the team, but it comes out that his grades aren't very good. He and Lucas are enemies. They just can't stand each other. So, of course, George goes to Lucas and needs him to tutor him so his grades will improve. Lucas is a bit of a social misfit and agrees to tutor George if George will help him pursue the person that he has been crushing on. And then, of course, once they spend time together, maybe some sparks are going to fly. We all need some cute little, fun little cinnamon bun fun every once in a while. And I think this is going to be just the ticket for me the next time I need that fix. Here is how See You at the Finish Line opens. Chapter 1, Lucas. Don't look outside the boat. That's all I can think right now. Don't look outside the boat. It's a shame, since I must have the best view in the house. To the left of me, the Oxford crew are poised in menacing silence. Behind them, a small flotilla of boats containing the umpire, TV crew, and various VIPs. It's the opening of See You at the Finish Line by Zach Hammett. This one is really exciting to me. It just came the other day. You may remember from a couple years back, if you have been following along for a while, that I was a big fan of Oyinkan Braithwaite's My Sister, the Serial Killer. Well, Oyinkan Braithwaite has another book coming out on November 4th, 2025. And Knopf was nice enough to send me an advanced reader's copy, and I am so excited. This is Cursed Daughters. It doesn't even really matter what the book is about to me, because I would read this on the strength of My Sister, the Serial Killer alone. It's just the way it is. But here is what this book is about. A wickedly funny, brilliantly perceptive novel about love, female rivalry, and superstition. When Ebon gives birth to her daughter Eniyi on the day they bury her cousin Munife, there is no denying the startling resemblance between the child and the dead woman. So begins the belief, fostered and fanned by the entire family, that Eniyi is the actual reincarnation of Munife, fated to follow in her footsteps in all ways, including her tragic end. There is also the matter of the family curse. No man will call your house home, and if they try, they will not have peace, which has been handed down from generation to generation, breaking hearts and causing 3 generations of abandoned Faladun women to live under the same roof. When Eniyi falls in love with the handsome boy she saves from drowning, she can no longer run from her family's history. As several women in her family have done before, she ill-advisedly seeks answers in older, darker, spiritual corners of Lagos, demanding solutions. Is she destined to live out the habitual story of love and heartbreak, or can she break the pattern once and for all, not only avoiding the spiral that led Munife to her lonely death, but also liberating herself from all the family secrets and unspoken traumas that have dogged her steps since before she could remember? It is also described as a brilliant cocktail of vibrant humor and hard-won wisdom, romantic love, and familial obligation. It asks us what it means to be given a second chance and how to live both wisely and well with what we've been given. And that just makes it even more interesting to me. Here is how this book begins. Ooh, it begins with a family tree. I love a book that opens with a map, and I love a book that opens with a family tree. Oh, there's a prologue. And as we know, I like to skip over those. Part 1, Eben, 2000. Gone too soon, the pastor had said, and she thought it the understatement of the century. Gone too effing soon. Let's stop there. That is Cursed Daughters by Oyinkan Braithwaite. I'm so excited. It's coming out November 4th, 2025. Now, the day after that came, I got To the Moon and Back by Eliana Ramage. This is also from Avid Reader Press, and they were kind enough to send a copy to me. It sounds so interesting. Here's what it is about. Oh, but I should tell you when it's coming out. October 28th, 2025. One young woman's relentless quest to become the first Cherokee astronaut will irrevocably alter the fates of the people she loves most in this tour de force of a debut about ambition, belonging, and family. I don't think I even need to tell you why that description really grabs my attention. Here is how this book opens. Steph, all that is or ever was or ever will be. June 1995, 8 years later. Wait a minute. Oh, that's part 1. That first part was a prologue. I was 13 years old in Oklahoma, 8 years now in the house in Tahlequah to which our mother had brought us. I wanted, more than anything, to be gone. To outer space. To a better school than my own that could help me get to outer space, and before that, to space camp. At least to space camp. The one thing that could hold me over while I waited for the rest of my life. That's To the Moon and Back by Eliana Ramage. Sounds so interesting. I feel so lucky to have been sent all of these books. All right, we have 2 more books that were sent by publishers. This is another one that's really interesting to me, or exciting to me, because I did not get around to reading The Sweetness of Water by Nathan Harris, but it is a book that I have been thinking about reading ever since it was initially published. Well, Nathan Harris has another book coming out called Amity, and this will be published on September 2nd from Little Brown. It has a gorgeous cover. I'm trying to hold it so you don't get any of the glare. It's just gorgeous. New Orleans, 1866. The Civil War might be over, but formerly enslaved Coleman and June have yet to find the freedom they've been promised. 2 years ago, the siblings were separated when their old master, Mr. Harper, took June away to Mexico, where he hoped to escape the new reality of the post-war South. Coleman stayed behind in Louisiana to serve the Harper family, clinging to the hope that one day June would return. When an unexpected letter from Mr. Harper arrives, summoning Coleman to Mexico, Coleman thinks that finally his prayers have been answered. What Coleman cannot know is the tangled truth of June's tribulations under Mr. Harper out on the frontier. And when disaster strikes Coleman's journey, he is forced to go on the run with Mr. Harper's daughter, Florence. Together, they venture into the Mexican desert to find June. As Coleman and June separately navigate a perilous, parched landscape, the siblings learn quickly that freedom isn't always given. Sometimes it must be taken by force. Yeah, that sounds interesting. I mean, they all sound interesting, but I'm just so excited about all of these books. And again, I feel lucky to have these copies that have been sent. Chapter 1, New Orleans, 1866. I had few pleasures to call my own. There was the peace found in the attic where I was made to board, the transporting comfort of the books in Mrs. Harper's library, the deliciousness of the sweet bread I purchased with my allowance from the bakery down the road each Sunday of rest. But all of it paled in comparison to the joy brought upon me by Oliver, the terrier I considered my own and the most intelligent, loyal companion one could ask for. As a dog lover, that really gets me. It really does. Okay. The last book that was sent to me by a publisher, this is the one, this came a couple of weeks ago, and I'm using it here because the next book is by the same author, but it transitions into books that I got for myself or were given by my sisters. Wreck by Catherine Newman. If you remember last year, Catherine Newman released a book called Sandwich, and I read it and I really liked it. And this, I didn't even know that it's a follow-up to Sandwich until this copy arrived. All I knew was that Catherine Newman was releasing another book, and I definitely wanted to read it. So this is from Harper. It will be published in October, and it's a tiny little thing, just like Sandwich was. So if you remember in Sandwich, our protagonist, Rocky, is a woman going through an interesting period of life. Her parents are aging, her kids are becoming adults, and now she's sort of stuck in that middle section of life. And she's also going through menopause, and as that book goes on, she's sort of struggling to adapt to the changing nature of her life and the changes that have already happened and the changes that are likely to come. So this book picks up, I believe, 2 years later. It doesn't actually say on the back, but I believe it picks up 2 years later. Her mother has passed away, and her father is living with Rocky and her husband, and their daughter, whose name escapes me, but who I absolutely loved in Sandwich, is living with them again. She's just graduated from college, and now she is living with them while she figures out her next step. And the story kind of picks up from there. And because I enjoyed Sandwich so much, I'm thrilled that we're going to get another chapter of the story. And I'm thrilled that I have this copy. And isn't the cover pretty? It's just pretty. Here is how this book begins. Chapter 1. In one single day, in two different directions, my life swerves from its path, even if I don't know it at the time, and even if you might not technically call it day, given that it's the middle of the night. There's a headlamp shining out from my forehead like I'm a miner, and what I'm mining is my own insomnia. Like I'm a spelunker, penetrating a deep cave that is filled only and completely with the absence of sleep. Wreck by Catherine Newman, coming in October. Now, in the month of, actually, I think this was at the end of June. I had already filmed my June book haul. And there's a new romance bookstore in Missoula called FMC, which stands for Female Main Character. I found We All Want Impossible Things, a novel by Catherine Newman, and I had never actually looked at what this book, which was published before Sandwich, was about. I read the description on the back and immediately felt like I needed a copy of it. Eddie and Ash have been best friends for more than 42 years. They've shared the mundane and momentous together, trick-or-treating and binge-drinking, Gilligan's Island reruns and REM concerts, hickeys and heartbreak, surprise Scottish wakes, marriages, infertility, and children. As Ash says, Eddie's memory is like the backup hard drive for mine. But now the unthinkable has happened. Eddie is dying of ovarian cancer and spending her last days at a hospice near Ash, who stumbles into grief surrounded by her daughters, ex-ish husband, dear friends, a poorly chosen lover or two, and a rotating cast of beautifully fleetingly human hospice characters. As the Fiddler on the Roof soundtrack blasts all day long from the room next door, Eddie and Ash reminisce, hold on, and try to let go. Meanwhile, Ash struggles with being an imperfect friend, wife, and parent, with life, in other words, distilled to its painful, joyful, and comedic essence. For anyone who's ever lost a friend or had one, get ready to laugh through your tears. I definitely trust Catherine Newman to take me on that journey. Sounds like it will be emotionally difficult, especially since Joel and I lost a very good, very dear friend last year, and we've been on a grief journey over the last few years, but I feel like I trust Catherine Newman, and I think I'm at a point where I can engage with a story like this. So at some point, I would like to. Here's how it begins. Oh, there's a prologue. I should just read the prologues and make my life easier. Chapter 1. At least I'm not sleeping with the hospice music therapist. Actually, let's just stop there. That's pretty perfect for We All Want Impossible Things, a novel by Catherine Newman. All right. Now we get into some of the stuff from the trip that I purchased. So we actually open with stuff that I got at Book Culture. Here is the bookmark that I got from them. So I went to Book Culture with Matthew Sharapa, and he actually recommended both of these books to me. The first is I Know You Know Who I Am. It's a story collection by Peter Kispert. This is one of the books that I read. I admit I almost DNF'd it. And it's not that it's badly written. It's that I think this is a case where even though the stories vary the circumstance pretty diversely, it just feels like you get the point from the description and from the first story to the point where you kind of don't need to really read the rest of the book. So these are about LGBTQ+, mostly gay men, almost exclusively gay men, characters who have gotten caught up in lies that they have told, whether because they want to hide an insecurity or they want to seem more than what they are. They get caught up in lies, and the situation pretty quickly spins wildly out of control. For instance, in the first story, there is a man who has lied to his boyfriend about a friend. He's worried that he would look like a loser who doesn't have any friends when they meet, so he makes up a friend. And eventually, of course, the man he's dating wants to meet his friend, so he hires an actor to play his friend and meet them in a cafe. And yeah, pretty much all of the stories follow a very similar setup. And I'm including this book in my haul because I purchased it. I did read it, so that's good. I admit I'm going to unhaul it. I'm going to take it to my local used bookstore and trade it in for credit. I'm glad that I read it. It is a good recommendation. I can see what Matthew likes about it. It just didn't really work for me. I almost forgot the whole point. Let's read a little bit from the first story, which is called I Know You Know Who I Am. It's a true story because it's a story I tell myself, but you want the story with true facts, the stuff I can prove. And even though that's impossible, well, here it is. Matthew also had recommended Hope by Andrew Ridker a long time ago, and my library never purchased a copy. I couldn't find an audio, and I never saw it in a bookstore. So he happened to point it out on the shelves at Book Exchange. Not Book Exchange. Book Exchange is my local used bookstore. Book Culture. And because I had been kind of hoping to run into a copy for so long, I purchased it. I read it on the plane on the way home and didn't really love it. So this is in the same boat as I Know You Know Who I Am. And it's difficult to say because we had a lot of flight delays. We ended up stranded in Minneapolis on the way home overnight. So it's difficult to say if this book would have been as frustrating to me if all of that additional stress and tension and problems with traveling weren't the very front and center in my mind. But I kind of found the family at the center of this book infuriating, and it is a book that trades in the ridiculous. People don't act like normal human beings. They just make terrible decisions again and again and again. And the premise is, so you have a family of 4. They are the Greenspans. Scott Greenspan is the patriarch. He is a doctor, and everything falls apart because he is taking part in a drug trial for patients with heart problems, and he needs money. So he needs money specifically so he can get his mother into a retirement home. And even the circumstances around that are overly complicated, so I'm simplifying a lot. And he starts making up patients to get more money from the person running the drug trial. And of course, he's caught pretty immediately and is going on trial and loses his medical license, is at least temporarily halted. His wife, who is sort of a pillar of the community in society, this wealthy community where they live in Massachusetts, and they have had an open marriage. She leaves him for the woman that she has been sleeping with. And his son is a very meek person and has sort of followed along in his father's footsteps, not necessarily because that's what he wants to do, but because he idolizes his father. So he is shaken to his core. The daughter isn't really involved in this, but she has her own crisis where a person that she used to know comes back into her life and she just messes everything up pretty heavily. And that's what Hope by Andrew Ridker is. Again, I see what was appealing about this book. I see what other people might find appealing in it. I just found myself incredibly frustrated. Here is how it opens. It opens at one of Deborah Greenspan's parties. "Everyone will take a card," said Deborah Greenspan, cradling a wicker basket in her arms. "Your cards are divided into 3 tiers of income. Your tier will determine where you sit, with whom, and most importantly, how much food you'll eat tonight." And let's stop there. That's Hope by Andrew Ridker. At the Strand on the Upper West Side, I got a copy of Bellies by Nicola Dinan. This is a book that I have been wanting a copy of for a while and have not been able to find in Montana. So when I saw a copy at the Strand on the Upper West Side, I got this, and I got a t-shirt from them as well. And I'm so excited to have this. Oh, the Strand. It begins as your typical boy meets boy. While out with friends at their local university drag night, Tom buys Ming a drink. Confident and witty, a magnetic young playwright, Ming is the perfect antidote to Tom's awkward energy, and their connection is instant. Tom finds himself deeply and desperately drawn into Ming's orbit, and on the cusp of graduation, he's already mapped out their future together. But shortly after they move to London to start their next chapter, Ming announces her intention to transition. From London to Malaysia, New York to Cologne, we follow Tom and Ming as they face tectonic shifts in their relationship and friend circle in the wake of Ming's transition. Through a spiral of unforeseen crises, some personal, some professional, some life-altering, Tom and Ming are forced to confront the vastly different shapes their lives have taken since graduating, and each must answer the essential question: is it worth losing a part of yourself to become who you are? Sounds like fascinating questions. I've heard a lot of really great things about this book, so I am so happy to finally have a copy for myself. Chapter 1 is called Bellies. I wore a dress on the night I first met Ming. A crowd swarmed the Union Bar, and my shoulders jostled as boys dressed as girls and girls dressed as boys pushed in and out of the front line. A tightness seized my brain, a vacuum pack seal over its folds. Let's stop there. That's Bellies by Nicola Dinan. We still have a lot of stuff to get through. When we went to Connecticut, we visited Books on the Common, which is in Ridgefield. A very cute store. Great curated fiction section. I really enjoyed it. So that is close to where my sister lives. So she knows I love bookstores. So she made sure we took a detour there. And I bought 2 books. First is The Names by Florence Knapp. This is a recent release, and it is about a woman who has a son, And there are three possible names. There's the name that her kind of abusive husband wants to name the kid, the name that she wants to name him, and the name that their older daughter wants to name him, which I think is Bear. So the book follows three different timelines. One, basically, in each timeline, she picks a different one of the three names. And the book charts how the course of her life and the son's life unfold after that, just based on the different name. Sounds like a fascinating concept. Danny, who is that Bookish Bear on Instagram, read this, and it's one of his favorite books of the year. I don't think it's his favorite anymore, but it's in that top tier. So that's enough for me, and I had to pick up a copy. All right. We begin with a prologue, and in this case, I think I'm going to go with the prologue because chapter 1 is where we pick up with the different timelines. So you can see we start with Bear. And there are fun illustrations for each of the timelines. I saw those when I was flipping through. So Bear, Julian, and I'll show you the third, if I can find it. Here's Gordon. All right, so let's deal with the prologue for this book. October 1987. Cora's mother always used to say children were whipped up by the wind, that even the quiet ones would come in after playtime made wild by it. Cora feels it in herself now, that restlessness. Outside, gusts lever at the fir trees behind the house and burst down the side passage to hurl themselves at the gate. Inside, too, worries Skitter and Eddie, because tomorrow, if morning comes, if the storm stops raging, Cora will register the name of her son. Or perhaps, and this is her real concern, she'll formalize who he will become. That's The Names by Florence Knapp. I've heard so many good things about that book. And because that store wasn't as busy as the ones in New York City, I was able to actually talk to an employee and ask them to recommend something. And Signal Fires by Dani Shapiro was one of the three books she picked for me. The other two were really interesting as well. Something about Signal Fires really jumped out at me, probably because she described it as a book with great empathy, and I love books with great empathy, so of course that really caught my interest. An ancient, majestic oak stands beneath the stars on Division Street, and under the tree sits Ben Wilf, a retired doctor, and 10-year-old Waldo Schenkman, a brilliant, lonely boy who is pointing out his favorite constellations. Waldo doesn't realize it, but he and Ben have met before, and they will again and again. Across time and space and shared destiny, Division Street is full of secrets. An impulsive lie begets a secret, one which will forever haunt the Wilf family. And the Schenkmans, who move into the neighborhood many years later, bring secrets of their own. Spanning 50 kaleidoscopic years on a street and in a galaxy where stars collapse and stories collide, these two families become bound in ways they never could have imagined. Urgent and compassionate, Signal Fires is a magical story for our times, a literary tour de force by a masterful storyteller at the height of her powers, a luminous meditation on family, memory, and the healing power of interconnectedness. And here is how it opens. August 27th, 1985. Sarah and Theo. And it's nothing, really, or might be nothing, or ought to be nothing, as he leans his head forward to press the tip of his cigarette to the car's lighter. It sizzles on contact, a sound particular to its brief moment in history, in which cars have lighters and otherwise sensible 15-year-olds choke down Marlboro Reds and drive their mother's Buicks without so much as a learner's permit. Signal Fires by Dani Shapiro. We're about at the point where I'm going to start whipping through these, and Forbidden Notebook is actually one I'm gonna. I've read this one and I talked about it recently and raved about it. I loved this book, so unfortunately that does mean I'm gonna cut through this one a little bit quickly. I had wanted to read this book for a long time. So Alba de Cespedes is a feminist writer from Italy. She died in 1997, I believe, and this book is about an Italian woman in the early 1950s who, spur of the moment, buys herself a notebook, and she buys it on a Sunday. Actually, she doesn't buy it because the store is not allowed to sell notebooks on Sunday. Hence, the notebook is literally forbidden, but it contains all of her thoughts and feelings about what is going on in her life, which also makes it a bit of a forbidden book, given the time and place in which she is writing it. As she starts to write, she starts examining her life and really thinking about it, and how she has no space in the apartment that she shares with her husband and her two children, who are now adults. And it is a fascinating glimpse into her life and what her mother was able to do as a woman and what her daughter is able to do as a woman. I absolutely love this book. I'm so glad that I have a copy. And it opens with a foreword from Jhumpa Lahiri, who you may remember I love. November 26, 1950. I was wrong to buy this notebook. Very wrong. But it's too late now for regrets. The damage is done. Forbidden Notebook by Albadis Espetis. I really encourage you to read it. It's translated by Ann Goldstein, who translates Elena Ferrante, and that will come up again in a moment. My older sister gave me a copy of Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant, a memoir in graphic form from Roz Chast. I was actually working at Macmillan, and one of our distribution clients was Bloomsbury, which is the publisher of this. When they were getting ready for this book, we were beginning the marketing push and having salespeople begin to go out and talk to buyers at bookstores about it. I was not still with the company. I had married and moved to Montana by the time the book actually came out. But so it's just funny that it has a connection to an old professional life of mine. Anyway, this is about Roz Chast's last years with her parents before they both passed away. And my sister saw it at a library sale, and she said, I thought this was something you would like. And boy, howdy, she knows me well. So that is Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant? We're going to start going a little quickly because we have a lot to cover and I'm already 42 minutes in. Antarctica by Claire Keegan. This is a short story collection by Claire Keegan. It was published before Small Things Like These, and therefore it is not as known as Small Things Like These, but I have loved Small Things Like These, Foster, and So Late in the Day, which I think includes at least one story from Antarctica, because So Late in the Day included a new short story and then two previously published ones to sort of round out the book. And I'm just excited to read more Claire Keegan, so I can't wait to get around to this. At my local used bookstore, they got a big, heaping pile of Elena Ferrante books. And I had already owned a copy of the first one. I am blanking on the name of it. Oh, it's from the Neapolitan Quartet. My Brilliant Friend. That shouldn't have been so hard. But anyway, here's where Ann Goldstein comes back, by the way. So I have a copy of My Brilliant Friend. I have already read it. Now I have a copy of Volume 2, The Story of a New Name, and Volume 3, Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay. I also picked up a copy of The Lost Daughter, which was adapted into a movie starring Olivia Colman. I have seen the movie, and it's a tiny little thing, so I figured that would be kind of fun to have a copy of as well. All right, now we get into our second pile of books. We're cruising along. All the Lonely People by Mike Gale. I saw this at my local used bookstore. So when we got a copy of The Stand-In Dad by Alex Summers, it compared Alex Summers to Matt Cain, who I love, Ryan Love, whose book Joel and I both enjoyed, and Mike Gale. And I hadn't read Mike Gale. I hadn't even heard of Mike Gale. So I immediately knew that this was an author that I needed to look up. And All the Lonely People is the one that I was most interested in because it sounds a little bit like The Secret Life of Albert Entwistle by Matt Cain, which I absolutely adore. So I had to get a copy of it. And this, in weekly phone calls to his daughter in Australia, widower Hubert Bird paints a picture of the perfect retirement in London, packed with fun, friendship, and fulfillment. But it's a lie. In reality, Hubert's days are all the same, dragging on without him seeing a single soul, until his daughter says she's coming for a visit. It's good news that turns out to be the worst news ever, news that will force him out again into a world that had made him suffer for being a black immigrant from Jamaica, the same world he has long since turned his back on. Now Hubert faces a seemingly impossible task to make his real life resemble his fake life before the truth comes out. It sounds so good. Joel actually read a different book by Mike Gale. You'll hear about it in our July wrap-up, and he loved it, so I'm even more excited about this one. Chapter 1, Now. Moments before Hubert met Ashley for the first time, he had been settled in his favorite armchair, puss curled in his lap, waiting for Rose to call. Let's stop there, because we're in a time crunch. All the Lonely People by Mike Gale. Disaster. House of Broken Angels by Luis Alberto Urrea is a book that I had been wanting to read for a long time and never got a copy. This hardcover edition of it was in the sale section at my local used bookstore. So I got this for, I think, $3, and you really can't beat that. This is, in his final days, beloved and ailing patriarch Miguel Angel de la Cruz, affectionately called Big Angel, has summoned his entire clan for one last legendary birthday party. But as the party approaches, his mother, nearly 100, dies herself, leading to a farewell doubleheader in a single weekend. Among the guests is Big Angel's half-brother, known as Little Angel, who must reckon with the truth that although he shares a father with his siblings, he has not, as a half-gringo, shared a life. And let's stop with the description there. I think you get the point about why I'm interested in this book. Maybe that will spark your own interest. And here's how it opens. Big Angel's last Saturday. Big Angel was late to his own mother's funeral. He tossed in his bed, the sheets catching his feet in a tangle. Sweat tickled his sides as he realized what was happening. The House of Broken Angels by Luis Alberto Urrea. I've heard a lot of really good things about that book, so I'm very excited to finally have a copy. Joel and I are collecting Cy Montgomery books, and The Hawk's Way turned up at our local used bookstore, so we got a copy. We also purchased a copy of The Friend Zone when we were at FMC, the new romance dedicated bookstore in Missoula, because we're collecting all of Abby Jimenez's books. And then the Happy Ever After playlist turned up at my local used bookstore. So 2 Abby Jimenez books, one of which I had already read, one of which I am going to read. And it won't count for my book haul revisit in a year because Abby Jimenez has become an author where we're collecting everything that she has written, and I typically exclude those. I read A Christmas Memory by Truman Capote, which includes the story One Christmas and the Thanksgiving Visitor in addition to A Christmas Memory, for the first time last December, and I loved it. And I decided it's going to be a tradition for me. I want to read all 3. And I wanted a copy of the book for that reason, but I wanted a specific cover, this cover, and it finally showed up, and I got it here. I love the story. It's so good. All right, these next 4 books are things that I found at a used bookstore in Montana that has a lot of out-of-print books. It's one of those chaotic used bookstores that has piles on the floor. I kind of like those. I like spending a lot of time going through everything and finding some treasures. I found Mrs. Miniver by Jan Struther. If you follow along, you know I am also obsessed with the Academy Awards. I recently went through and discovered, I didn't know that Mrs. Miniver was based on a book, but it is. And I didn't think I would really be able to track down a copy easily, but they had it at this store. So I got myself a copy of that. Now, as part of my Pulitzer project, Java Head is one of the books I wanted to read, but it's really hard to track down. It's by Joseph Hergesheimer. He was a very popular author at the time the Pulitzers first started, so circa 1917, 1920. But he is completely forgotten now, which is also something that really makes me interested. Java Head was supposed to be the winner of, I believe, the 3rd Pulitzer Prize for fiction. But there was a debate because at the time, the mandate for the Pulitzer Prize included the word wholesome. And when the jury recommended it as the winner to the board, there was a debate about whether or not Java Head met the criteria of wholesome. So they decided not to award a prize that year. It was the first time that no prize was given in a calendar year after the prize started. So I can't wait to read this as part of my Pulitzer project. They had other books by Joseph Hergesheimer, and I haven't fact-checked this yet, but I think Basiland was also a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. It might have been a different book called 3 Black Pennies or something like that. So fun things for me to have, and so is I Am a Camera. This is a play that was based on Christopher Isherwood's Goodbye to Berlin, which is where the character of Sally Bowles was introduced. I Am a Camera was the first adaptation of that book. So it's the first time you see Sally Bowles on stage. I love this photograph of the set. And of course, Sally Bowles also appeared on stage later on in Cabaret, which was then adapted into a movie, and there's the history of this. I can't wait to read this because I think that's going to be fascinating. The last book I brought into my library in July, and this really seals the fact that Ann Patchett isn't an author that I am collecting all of her books. And I'm actually collecting them all in hardcover. So when I see a hardcover, I feel like I have to get it. Taft showed up at my local used bookstore. and I decided to grab it because this was, I think, her second book published after The Magician's Assistant. And it's definitely one of her lesser known books, but it's a hardcover Ann Patchett book. I have not loved everything by Ann Patchett that I have loved, but I have found everything interesting, at least. And because I admire her as a person, I'm happy getting copies of everything she has published. So, those are the many, 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 many books I brought into my library in the month of July. If you have thoughts about these books or recommendations based on my interest in these books, let me know in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, especially since this has been a bit of a long one. And as always, I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.